Tonight on Reporting Scotland from coal to clean energy. Work on Europe's biggest battery storage plant is underway at a former mine in South Lanarkshire, where it'll supply 3 million homes with low-carbon energy. Also on tonight's programme, campaigners say adults who think they're autistic are waiting too long for a diagnosis. William tells us his story.
I began to realise, actually, a lot of this describes my experiences, especially when I was younger, not really fitting in.
The cost of the capital, Edinburgh's potential tourist tax revealed. Scientists trial a possible breakthrough in the fight against prostate cancer.
And coming up in the sport, can Celtic extend their enormous lead at the top of the table when third place Dundee United arrive at the home of the champions?
Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. Now take a look at this. This is what's believed will be Europe's largest battery storage plant. You can see the sheer scale of it, and it's at Colburn in South Lanarkshire on the site of a former open-cast coal mine. The First Minister was there today as work prepares to begin on the second phase of construction. Storage facilities are needed in the transition towards renewable energy to balance the peaks and troughs in electricity being generated. And developers say this has the capacity to power 3 million homes. Here's our environment and energy correspondent, Kevin Keane.
When it's fully completed, the developers behind this and its neighbouring battery farm across the motorway say it'll be able to power all homes in Scotland for up to 2 hours at a time. It'll be one of the biggest battery sites in Europe as demand for energy storage continues to grow. The team here say it's vital as more of our electricity generation comes from wind. Why is this technology so important?
So this technology here, a battery energy storage project, is key, because what it does is allows us to underpin and enable both current and future renewable energy deployment. Renewables are weather dependent, and of course therefore any degree of storage helps us better manage that, and CIP's investment in these projects allows us to make major strides today and in the coming few years towards that journey towards net zero.
The new phase announced today in this former open-cast coal mine represents symbolically the transition from planet-warming fossil fuels to clean energy. But since the wind doesn't always blow, the ability to store electricity is crucial. At the moment, just these concrete blocks are in place, ready for the batteries to arrive and be installed on top of them. It's right next to the M74 motorway, but also, crucially, an electricity highway. Those big pylons are from where the electricity will be removed and stored and then returned when it's needed. The site was visited today by the First Minister, who's been keen to avoid projects like this becoming clogged up in the planning process. With a six-fold increase needed in this type of storage, he insists the views of communities will still be considered.
We've got to make sure the planning process works efficiently, but we've also got to make sure that communities and individuals are able to express their opinions and have their concerns and their perspectives taken fully into account, and that cannot be compromised. But that doesn't mean to say that the planning process has got to take forever. So I want to make sure that Scotland is a country that is open for investment.
While this is a brownfield site, there have been campaigns against batteries closer to homes. But to achieve a fully green energy system, politicians will have to face the prospect of more opposition as demand for storage continues to grow. Kevin Keane reporting Scotland, Colburn.
Campaigners say adults who think they're autistic are waiting too long for an NHS diagnosis. The National Autistic Society Scotland claims more adults are seeking one after their children have been diagnosed. The Scottish Government says it's trying to improve access. Suzanne Allen reports.
William is a father of two and a Baptist minister living in Ellon in Aberdeenshire. Growing up, he felt different.
My childhood was very much a social outsider. I just didn't fit. And that remained that way until maybe late teens. I began to be able to blend into the background a bit better.
Now 41, when his first child was diagnosed with autism, aged 2, William began looking into autistic traits. Some autistic people have sensory sensitivities, for instance, to light, sound and texture.
As I was reading more about autism and realising what it actually meant, certainly the sensory issues, things with noise, foods, all that.
According to the National Autistic Society Scotland, William is one of a growing number of adults contacting them who've learned they're autistic after their child has been diagnosed.
Did some of the online tests and stuff and began to realise, yeah, actually, a lot of this describes my experiences, especially when I was younger, not really fitting in and being able to follow the social norms of the day.
Most people look for a diagnosis on the NHS, but many are forced to go private, like William did. Campaigners want more money for diagnosis on the NHS.
But we think it's very important that the Scottish Government makes sure that there is funding available to ensure that people can get a diagnosis when they need that. We also need to understand the picture across the country in terms of how long people are waiting. So in England, for example, those statistics are freely available and published, but they aren't in Scotland. So it's difficult for us to understand fully the scale of the problem.
William took part in a programme called Embrace Autism. It's a group support project for recently diagnosed and self-diagnosed adults run by autistic people.
Our goal is to try and encourage people to find more of a positive outcome and to find a community. A lot of people feel very isolated and very alone. They feel they can maybe come to us feeling that they're a little bit broken or that they're other. It's important to recognise that autistic people are not a problem. We are not, we're just a difference.
Not everyone who thinks they might be autistic needs or wants a diagnosis. The Scottish Government told us it recognises people are waiting longer than they should, but says it's working to improve access to diagnosis. William has advice for people who think they're in the same position as he was.
Take their time, just begin looking into it, and if it is something that they suspect that they have, then there's a chances that they're already finding life a bit of a challenge, so go easy on themselves, because it's not always the easiest walk.
Suzanne Allen, reporting Scotland.
Well, they're going to be looking at this story as well as lots more on the new Reporting Scotland News at 7 programme on the BBC Scotland channel tonight. Laura McKeever is with us now to tell us more. Laura, who are you going to be hearing from tonight?
We are welcoming Sean into the set tonight. So Sean got an adult diagnosis of autism, but he now works for a think tank and they employ people who have autism. So it'll be really interesting to hear from him. We're also going to be talking to some litter pickers, Laura. Now, these are volunteers.
It's hard work, isn't it?
It really is. They work on the A9, on lay-bys and safe areas, and you will be horrified to learn some of the things that are thrown away and that they end up having to deal with. So a report from David Knox from the Borders. I know. Brace yourself for that one. And finally, we all need a laugh, don't we, this time of year? It's
sure do.
Cold and dark, and it's January. The Glasgow International Comedy Festival is happening in March, but the schedule was unveiled today, and Susie McCabe, the comedian, can tell us more about her new show, which was inspired by her heart attack at the age of 44.
Wow.
She says she's made it funny, so...
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Tune in to the
Absolutely, lots to tune in
more.
for. Thank you very much, Laura. So that is Reporting Scotland News at 7, which is on the BBC Scotland channel tonight. Here is where you can find it. Details there on your screen. The team are also keen to hear from you. The email address is news7@bbc.co.uk, and it will also be available on the iPlayer too. Lots of ways to catch up. Now to some of the day's other stories. And 2 30-year-old men have been arrested in connection with a disturbance in Glasgow. It happened in the early hours of this morning on Jamaica Street, which was closed for several hours. Inquiries are ongoing to identify and trace 2 further men believed to be involved in the incident. Police are urging anyone with any information to come forward. The First Minister has apologised unreservedly to islanders affected by delays in building 2 ferries to serve off Scotland's west coast. John Swinney told BBC Scotland News the government is looking at how the process can be improved. One of the ferries, the Glen Sannox, will start carrying passengers next week. A former leader of Glasgow City Council has been banned from driving for a year after being caught more than 3 times over the alcohol limit. Stephen Purcell was pulled over on the M77 motorway near the city's south side last October. The 52-year-old resigned as leader and councillor in 2010, citing stress and exhaustion. And the Scottish Green co-leader Patrick Harvie is to take leave from the Scottish Parliament to have an operation. He's expected to be off work for about 6 weeks. The party says his staff will continue to work on behalf of his constituents, while his portfolio work in Parliament will be covered by his colleagues. A US fugitive extradited from Scotland is going on trial for rape in September. Nicholas Rossi was sent back to America last year after being arrested in a Glasgow hospital, claiming to be an Irish orphan called Arthur Knight. Stephen Gordon reports.
For almost 3 years, this bizarre figure behind the oxygen mask protested he was the victim of mistaken identity. But Scottish judges ruled that Arthur Knight was indeed Nicholas Rossi, something he would later admit. At Rossi's latest hearing in Utah, it was confirmed he'll stand trial in September, accused of raping a woman in 2008. The court heard that discussions about a plea deal haven't been fruitful and that prosecutors have withdrawn the offer. Separately, Rossi is facing trial in April, accused of another 2008 rape allegation in a neighbouring county. He denies the charges.
Stephen Gordon with that report. Now, more and more buses across Scotland are electrically powered. Gradually getting rid of diesel buses will play a part in cutting greenhouse gas emissions. But tonight, it seems there's been a bit of a bump in the road. The main bus company in Glasgow has temporarily withdrawn some of its electric vehicles because of a fault and replaced them with diesel buses. Well, our news correspondent Jamie McIver is at First Buses depot in Glasgow tonight for us. Jamie, what more can you tell us?
Well, Laura, First is very proud of its investment in electric buses, and this is the depot where they get charged up. The company has 200 electric buses in Glasgow, and they're a common sight around the city on a whole variety of bus routes. But some of those electric buses are out of action at the moment, 30 in total, that's roughly 1 in 7. The technical problem was identified a few weeks ago, so modern diesel buses from elsewhere have been brought in to try to ensure there's no disruption to services. Now, these buses can still be used in the city centre low emission zone, and the company says the air pollution from them is minimal, but this is still a short-term setback, both to the efforts to decarbonise public transport and to the efforts to try to improve the air quality in Glasgow city centre.
And Jamie, do we know what the actual cause of this issue is?
No, not exactly. First hasn't said just what the problem is, but it is working with the manufacturer Alexander Dennis to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. What we do know is that it isn't a problem with the battery on the bus, nor is it a problem with electric vehicle technology. I've been speaking to Alexander Dennis and they tell me it's a structural issue, but a rectification has been developed to resolve the problem. First also make the point that at no time was there any threat to the safety of either passengers or drivers.
OK, Jamie in Glasgow, thank you. Now, something of a good news story, as researchers say they're seeing encouraging results from trials of a new process to detect prostate cancer. At the moment, the disease is diagnosed with a blood test and MRI scan. But a team from Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh is trialling a process using ultrasound, which is quicker and cheaper. Our science and innovation correspondent, Laura Goodwin, has more.
Gary Tate was diagnosed with prostate cancer 6 years ago.
I was going to the toilet pretty regularly, especially at night time, which is a feature of potentially prostate cancer. Obviously at that time, not sure what it was or if it was anything of an issue. So went down to see the doctor, had a PSA test, and that came back with a slightly elevated. It wasn't particularly high, but it was higher than it ought to be. And that was a starting point, really. At that point, there was something not right.
Gary's cancer was treatable because it was caught early, but there are calls for improvements to how the disease is detected and treated. 52,000 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer every year in the UK. The current means of detection is a blood test called a prostate-specific antigen or PSA test. But that test is unreliable, which means the next step is to send someone for an MRI scan. But that is expensive and wait times can be lengthy. Now researchers at Heriot-Watt University are trialling a new imaging test. A contrast agent is injected into a vein that sends millions of tiny bubbles into the patient's bloodstream, and then an ultrasound can be used to track the bubbles as they flow inside the prostate.
So this is the MRI scan that prostate patients undergo under the current standard of care. One of them picked up something bright, suspicious here that we now know was a tumor. In our pictures, there's a lot more detail, about 20 times more detail, and we pick up the same lesion, but we also pick up another one that was not picked up.
But this technology, I think, will help us diagnose cancers that an MRI might have missed. It will help us focus or target biopsies and treatment.
The team say the results seen so far have been encouraging, but that it will be between 3 and 5 years and pending regulatory approval before this technology could be used in a clinical setting. Laura Goodwin, reporting Scotland.
Tonight's main news again. Work on Europe's biggest battery storage plant is underway at a former coal mine in South Lanarkshire. It will supply 3 million homes with low-carbon energy.
Still to come in the sport, we'll hear from the Kilmarnock and Motherwell camps, with the two facing each other at Rugby Park in tonight's other Premiership match.
Now, as of next summer, visitors to Edinburgh will most likely have to pay for the pleasure. And now we know how much. The proposed tourist tax is set to be at 5% of accommodation costs. Councillors still have to rubber stamp the move, but hope it could raise sizable funds to go towards improving the capital. But as Maura Kinneborough reports, the charge still has its critics.
It's a stunning setting, attracting visitors from across the world. But Edinburgh's plans to charge a tourist tax of 5% has drawn mixed views.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
We used to live in Bath, which is obviously very touristy.
It's been pretty decimated.
And the tourists, they just ruin everything.
It's already been higher cost for the student and the tourists, some tourists from other countries.
I don't know if it's really fair to add the taxes on.
I think with that tax, it can make Scotland to be better.
I don't think it's a big fee, so it's all right.
Edinburgh is set to be the first in Scotland to charge an extra 5% fee to the first 5 nights of anyone's stay in the city at any time of year. The tourist tax will apply to everyone using paid accommodation, whether for work or holiday, from the tiniest tent to the largest luxury lodge. There are a few exemptions, but they'll need to pay and then claim the money back.
It's going to be 5% on top of 20% VAT for everybody visiting Edinburgh, whatever the reason, not just international visitors. That, in addition to the administrative burden, especially on small accommodation providers, is going to make our businesses really, really untenable.
The City Council reckons the scheme will cost £1 million a year to run and could bring in up to £50 million a year, the money used for city improvements to benefit both residents and visitors.
Inevitably, people coming to the city use resources that are currently paid for through council tax, so they understand the logic of it, but most importantly, get the benefits of it.
If the figures are approved by councillors later this month, the visitor levy will apply to bookings for the summer of next year. Maura Kinneborough, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
OK, let's get tonight's sport now with Lewis, and there's football on the cards.
There certainly is, yeah, and I'm not here to bring you the weather, Laura, but good luck to the fans heading out in this one tonight.
Yeah,
could be interesting.
hardy souls they are, aren't they?
They are indeed. Thanks so much. Cheers. Hello there. Yes, it is a brisk night for football, but that won't stop the crowds heading to Celtic Park and Rugby Park with 2 games on the Premiership card tonight. We'll look at Killie and Motherwell in just a moment, but Celtic and Dundee United take top billing as the runaway leaders host a United side who have impressed on their first season back in the top flight. Martin Dowden is at Parkhead.
Celtic enjoy a healthy 13-point gap at the top, up against a Dundee United side that are one of a few that have managed to take something against the champions. That in a 0-0 draw in Dundee in December. Jim Goodwin's side having a really strong return to the Premiership. Third in the table as things stand, but off the back of defeat to Hearts at the weekend. What will be of interest tonight is the reaction of the home crowd after the Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers bristled a little, to say the least, at early criticism during their win over St Mirren at the weekend, and at songs being sung about the potentially incoming Kieran Tierney and the impact that may have had on left-back Greg Taylor during that particular match. Let's hear what both managers had to say in the build-up to this one.
To win in the first cup of the season, to then arrive at halfway point in a really good place, and now to add to that lead, of course that makes us very happy, but still so many games to play, such a long season, and there'll be other markers along the way. So, but at this moment in time, the players have been absolutely fantastic in the quality of the football, but the mentality as well.
Well, we were excellent against Celtic out here last time in terms of the shape of the team. You know, obviously you expect Celtic to have plenty of possession of the ball, and you know, that shape and that discipline and the organisation is vital if we're going to take anything on Wednesday.
Both managers have been citing the impact of the schedule on their squads of late, but you'd have to think it might impact the visitors more here tonight, given relative squad sizes and the fact that you would expect Dundee United to be chasing the ball a lot tonight as they seek to take something once again, or in fact even notch a rare win here in Glasgow. You can follow all the action on Sportsound tonight on BBC Radio Scotland, plus updates of Kilmarnock v Motherwell. Martin Dowden reporting Scotland, Celtic Park.
Well, Motherwell could move within a point of United when they travel to play Kilmarnock. The Fir Park team, who will have manager Stuart Kettlewell watching from the stand, are looking to build on their win over Aberdeen on Sunday, their first victory in 5 matches, while Kelly are hoping to bounce back from defeat to Ross County, just their 3rd loss of the season at Rugby Park.
It's important that we reset now. We've got the last game now for 10 days, for 2.5 weeks really in the league. So we've got to try and make the most of it when it comes round, and that's the thing. We've just got to try and get back to our levels. You know, last few home games have been really strong.
We've had a tough spell of fixtures, certainly over that Christmas New Year period. You know, even looking at the kind of Celtic away, Rangers within the space of a couple of days is always going to be a difficult run. But I just feel that from our side, for the start of the season, you've kind of found us in that top half of the table. That's where we want to try and remain.
There's one game tomorrow night with Rangers visiting Dundee, and Ibrox boss Philippe Clement here insists his team are continuing to show signs of potential despite falling further behind league leaders Celtic. Rangers will travel to Dens Park with several players missing. James Tavernier, Jack Butland, John Souttar and Leon Balogun are all injured, and Nico Raskan is suspended, and they could be 16 points behind their biggest rivals come kick-off.
We've seen the potential, and that's a good thing. The potential that everybody in the club believed in before the season in the squads, but it's about getting this consistently. We didn't take this season 1 point yet that we didn't deserve, that the opponent was better and we win the game. That you need also in a season. So those things we need to take, and we're going to go to Dundee to try to be the best team and to win the points.
Scotland international Sam Kerr has signed for Liverpool from German club Bayern Munich on loan until the end of the season. The 25-year-old midfielder joined Bayern in 2023, winning the Women's Bundesliga in her first year with the club. She previously had spells with Glasgow City and Rangers and has won 32 caps for her country. Now, the man tasked with staging the Commonwealth Games says that Scotland will put on a spectacular show that will signal a defining moment in the history of the competition. Scotland stepped in at the 11th hour after the Australian state of Victoria pulled out. The Games will look quite different from when Glasgow last staged them in 2014 with fewer sports and smaller venues. But Phil Batty, the chief executive, is optimistic about the event's future.
2026 is definitely a game-changing moment for the Commonwealth sport movement. We've had such successful games in previous years, in Birmingham, in Gold Coast, in Glasgow, but I think people will be looking at Glasgow 2026 and seeing what happens here and Scotland's contribution to the future of the movement as a really defining moment in the history of the Commonwealth Games, particularly as they look forward to their centenary year in 2030.
Intriguing to see how it all looks when it comes round, Laura.
Absolutely, it'll be here before we know it.
Certainly will.
Hope the weather's as good as last time. Not sure, Chris, if you can give us a forecast that far ahead.
No, probably not.
Maybe just for today. What a picture.
Oh yes,
stunning.
Beautiful blue skies and snow on the beach.
sums up the last couple of days and the next couple of days, actually, with the cold weather set to stick with us by day and by night. Some really cold nights coming up. Laura, thanks very much indeed. Very good evening to you. Yes, we've had another day of some sunshine, but equally some very cold weather and some snow at times too, some snow showers. And we still have a Met Office yellow warning in force across the northern parts of the mainland, through Skye, the Western Isles and the Northern Isles for the risk of snow showers and some icy surfaces. Those showers continuing to arrive on those northerly winds, rain or sleet around the coast, but snow inland, several centimetres on top of what's already fallen. Elsewhere, dry, clear and cold, very cold. -5 to -7 in towns and cities, and in the countryside -10 across the south and through the northeast, and some mist and freezing fog patches likely to form in the southwest. So to tomorrow, it's a very cold start. Once again, these fairly frequent rain, sleet and snow showers across the far north and the northeast, moving their way southwards. Elsewhere, it's largely dry with some wintry sunshine, but there could well be some stubborn areas of freezing fog that could be with you for much of the day. On the thermometer, 2 degrees, about the best we'll see. Further north, with a little more breeze, feeling colder than that. And there will be that feed of showers with us once again. Around the west and northwest coast, likely to be rain or sleet, but certainly inland, as we've seen in recent days, falling as snow. Into tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, those showers tending to fade away. We'll have largely dry conditions, clear conditions, calm conditions. Perfect recipe for really cold weather. -6, -7 in towns and cities. In the countryside, if there's snow on the ground, perhaps -15 to -18, with the outside chance, perhaps, of 1 or 2 spots, maybe down to a rather cold -20. That takes us to Friday, which will be a cold start to the day. Once again, there'll be some mist and freezing fog around, but then for much of the country, for much of the day, dry with some sunshine. But it will likely be an ice day for some. That means temperatures not getting above freezing, even in towns and cities. Perhaps 1 or 2 light showers, but for most dry and once again light winds. Looking further ahead now, through Saturday, right through towards Monday, we start to see something milder moving in from the southwest. But on Saturday, there is a little weather front working its way in, so a cloudier day on Saturday. Patchy rain around the west coast as that front moves eastwards. A bit of snow, light snow, almost anywhere, but it moves through fairly quickly. And then beyond that, you can see Sunday into Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, temperatures really recover. Double digits. High pressure with us too, so hopefully largely dry. That's the forecast for now.
And I have to say a shout out to your weather watchers recently. The pictures have been beautiful. Yes. Thank you, Christopher. Now tonight's main news again. Work is underway to create what's been described as Europe's largest battery storage project on the site of a former open cast coal mine in South Lanarkshire. And just a reminder, the new Reporting Scotland News at 7 programme is going to be starting over on the BBC Scotland channel in just a few moments. Laura McKeever is presenting tonight, and here is where you can find it, and it will also be available on the iPlayer. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. The late news is at 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone on the team, do enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.